Welcome. My name is Naomi, and I'm the host of the Our World Story podcast. Our World Story is a place for travel enthusiasts to share their memories, insights, and advice. Our guests here on the podcast use this as their own personal travel journal, so our listeners will experience the world through their travel adventures. And today, I have my guest V here. Hi, V. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's get straight into the backstory segment of the podcast. Introduce yourself, what you do, and kind of where are you currently living right now in the world?
My name is Victoria Waller, but I go by V. Everyone calls me V. I currently live in Prince George's County, Maryland, East Coast. I am a travel specialist for the U.S. government. I am a digital business manager, and I am a travel consultant / group leader for my own company called Venture with V.
It seems like you're juggling a lot of different things throughout your career here.
Yeah, I am, but it seems like everything that I'm juggling, it all like meshes into one. So with me working as a travel specialist for the government, I have the knowledge of like visas and all that good stuff, clearances that helps me in my own travel business with country clearances, countries to visit, group traveling, and just the planning of it all. So it all works together.
That's good to hear when you're able to mesh your passion and what you do for a living. So that's so cool.
Yeah.
So how did you get started with traveling in the first place? What really sparked your interest in travel?
To be honest, like traveling was in my blood. I was born, before I was even born, like I was a travel bug. Like I had that bug in me because my father, he traveled to Africa and Europe while he was in the Air Force. And then my mother traveled, like she would just get up and go on a Friday, travel to California, come back on the East Coast on a Monday and get right back to work. So like when I was younger, my mom, she traveled a lot for her job. So she would bring me and my brother along with her. And we traveled to the Caribbean for vacations all the time. I took my first trip to Nigeria. It just transformed my way of thinking about traveling. And it transformed my mindset about stereotypes and biases and like how we perceive different cultures. And it just fired up a passion in me to travel outside of my little bubble, outside of America and outside of the Caribbean, but like further.
That's so interesting that you were able to go to Africa and to Nigeria. Do you have family there, or were you just
just went. I was blessed with the opportunity to just go and feel like, well, me personally, I think that is a goal for all, African Americans or Black people in America. Like we all came from Africa at one point in time. So we should all travel back to the motherland and just experience that.
I feel like there's two different purposes of travel, really. It's to kind of go to a place that's well known, to go to resorts. And like you mentioned, a lot of people go to the Caribbean to just hang out and get away and get outside of the United States. But when you really take it a step further and go to a place that may not be as popular among family and friends, and you really step out of your comfort zone and you see a different culture and you experience, especially I feel like for Africa, I'm glad that you took the chance to go and see a different part of the world.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for the experience, and it changed the trajectory of my life, I feel like, because without that trip, I would have been very closed-minded to a lot of opportunities that I did take a chance and take a risk on. And now just looking at mainstream media of what is portrayed of just other different countries, not just Africa, but based on that trip, like now when I see things, I have to take a step back and just realize that not everything is true that is portrayed in the media, and you should go experience it for yourself.
So true. I completely agree. In addition to Nigeria and the Caribbean, where are some other places that you've traveled to I know you said you were traveling since you were younger. So could you just give a quick overview of some of the other places that you've been?
I've been to Iceland, I've been to Belize, Costa Rica, Guatemala, I've been to Dubai, Kenya. I lived in China, so that opened a whole bunch of doors for
Wow.
me to travel to Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar, the Philippines, um, and I believe I've been to 16 Hong Kong. Oh my gosh, Hong Kong. Hong
Wow.
Kong is dope. But I believe I've been to 16 countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 countries so far.
I kind of want to go into China and the experience that you had living there, um, before we get into the main story really quick, because that's a
Mhm.
really unique experience. I know I was able to travel to China as well for a 2-week trip. When you were there, what was your experience like?
It was definitely a culture shock. And it was literally kind of the either I sink or I swim type of vibe because this is my new home and I have to get with the culture or struggle. But it honestly, like, I love China. Like, the it's so fast paced, it's so developed, like you can't
Mhm.
even fathom how developed China is and their system of like currency, money, transportation, for transportation alone, their metro system, and just how everything just works. So life is just easy over there. For me, it was. The food is amazing. I remember my very first
Yes.
night in Hong Kong. I was so hungry. And like I wasn't the Chinese food here is completely different than the Chinese food there, as I'm sure you
So
know.
true. Yes.
And I was not prepared for the food options. Like I
Mhm.
wanted my version of Chinese food. I was so I was so hungry and I had packed like a whole bunch of protein bars before my trip, but I'm like, I'm trying to
Mhm.
ration these out.
Mhm.
But my friends who had been to China before, who had came, well, it was an onboarding group. So the people who came with me on my onboarding group, they had familiarity with China. So they're like, oh yeah, we're going to Yang's Dumplings. We're going to this place, get some food. I'm like, okay, I'll go. I looked at the menu and I was like, I don't see anything here that I want. Like, I can't even pronounce half this stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's so true.
And I starved that night. And then it got to a point, maybe like the third night, I was like, look, I got to eat something. Let me just try it. Be open minded. Went back to my thoughts and my experience from Nigeria, being open minded there.
Yep.
And I love Yang's dumplings now. Like the same restaurant that I ate at, well, that I didn't eat at the first time, I
Mhm.
was eating there maybe like at least once a week. Like I was literally dropped in a country, didn't know the language, didn't know how to really live. I developed relationships. I was able to travel by myself, get around, and it it was an incredible, again, life-changing experience. And if I had my way, I would move back to China,
Wow.
specifically Hong Kong.
I think the thing that really stood out to me the most was the how welcoming the people were. It's
Hmm.
people would just approach you, especially being like a Black woman. I had braids in at the time because, of course, you don't want to worry about having to do your hair when
Hmm.
you're traveling in a country where you don't know the language. And people would come up and just say, like, "Oh, like, can I take a picture with you? Can I touch your
Hmm.
hair?" They're so interested and curious in you. And I haven't had an experience traveling like that besides in China. It's a really refreshing experience.
It's interesting that you say refreshing because for me, it was a complete total culture shock. And it took me a while to really get used to that and to be comfortable and confident in myself because during with all that going on, like I kind of felt insecure. I didn't know what was going on. I just saw people coming up to me taking pictures. Sometimes they asked if they could take a picture, sometimes they didn't ask,
Mhm.
sometimes they just stepped in front of me, took a picture, other times they, yeah, would just come up to me, touch my hair.
Right.
And I went through a process of like really like insecurity, and then really angry, like why are, like, don't they understand? But again, once you I got submerged in the culture and just really took myself out of the situation and like looked at it from their perspective, And I realized, like, the only Black people they see are probably, sports, athletes,
Yes.
or, they don't get to see like an
A
authentic, like
regular,
a regular
just
everyday
every
Black
day.
girl. So
Exactly.
this is foreign to them.
Well, the reason why I say refreshing is because I was kind of pre-warned and pre-prepped for the
Oh, you
experience
were?
that I was going to have. Exactly.
Good for you. I wasn't.
Because it can be a little shocking. I think the first time it really happened to me, I'm like, whoa, this is intense, because people really do just walk up to you and
Mm-hmm.
take pictures. And like you mentioned, some people ask, some people don't. I went with Howard University, the school I went to. It was a
Mm-hmm.
trip there, and they do it every year with a group of students in their freshman year to expose us to the business side of China. Because as you mentioned, China is way developed. There's so much to learn
Mm-hmm.
there. So we have an annual trip that we go on. So they definitely warned us about that ahead of time. So it was shocking, I'm sure, for a bunch of people in China to see a group, like a large group of young African American students just like them traveling in their
Mm-hmm.
country. So I know I guess I should have said that before. I wasn't by myself, and it was a way more comfortable experience since I had like my close friends with me. So I just wanted to shift and go into the main story. And this is the part of our podcast where I just asked our guests to share one travel experience that they went on. And we can dive deep into all like the details of that story.
Mm-hmm.
So, V, what story did you want to discuss today?
I wanted to talk about my first solo trip, my first accidental solo trip to Myanmar.
What was the purpose of your trip to Myanmar?
It was Chinese New Year, and Myanmar was one of my, well, it has been one of my top five destinations to travel to. And I figured, since I have 5 days off for the Chinese New Year, that I might as well take advantage and travel to one of the nearby places that are on my top five list. And Myanmar was the less expensive option to choose from, because also it was Thailand, Cambodia, and Sri Lanka, but those prices for Chinese New Year, for
Mm,
specifically for Chinese New Year, traveling from China to those places were extremely expensive. So
gotcha. So it's a budget move there for that one, but also on your top five. So that's
yeah.
really cool that you're able to do that.
Hmm.
Did you go with anyone in particular?
Nope.
Oh,
That's why
you
I said it
mentioned it
was
was a solo
it
trip.
was an accidental solo trip,
Okay.
because I've never, other than moving to China, I've never traveled by myself before, and I was scared to travel by myself, and it got to a point where I was scared, and then the fear that other people were projecting on me got me even more anxious. And I got to a point where I was literally just begging people to go with me. Like, hey, all you have to do is just buy your flight. Just buy your flight. I got the hotel. Cool. I'll pay for your food, whatever you need, transportation.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
all the rest of the costs. Just come with me. And no one wanted to go.
Mm.
No one wanted to go, or people had other plans they made for the Chinese New Year. They were going other places. So, but I didn't want that to stop me from missing out on one of my top favorite bucket list destinations. So
Mm.
I went by myself.
Yeah. I have definitely actually been in that exact same experience where I was abroad in Spain, and I really wanted to go to Switzerland for just a weekend. Um, and I ended up begging my friend. I'm like, all you have to do is pay for the exact same situation
Just
that you
pay for your
explained.
flight.
Just pay for your flight. I ended up, I'll admit, I ended up paying for like our, we were using Airbnb, and I was just so terrified to go by myself. So I completely understand the fear that comes along with that. But what ultimately made up your mind to just take the leap and go?
It's just the fact that I didn't want my actions to be dictated on other people's what other people could or could not do. I didn't want my actions to dictate the fear of other people. And I wasn't going to allow myself to be held back by other people. Just looking at the way God plans things out, like I'm glad now that He closed those doors to not allow people to come with me, because that trip again was transformative, and just getting to know more about myself, what I like, what I don't like, and just trusting in Him. There was a situation where I was walking around and I was lost. I didn't know where I was going. I was trying to get to the market
Mm-hmm.
in Rangoon, and I realized I was lost. I didn't know where I was going. And I sat back and I prayed, and I was like, Lord, please help me, like get me to the market before it closes, like just send some type of help. And literally, like not even 5 minutes later, this cab driver pulled up, rinketing van. I don't even know if it was a cab. I don't know. Pulled up beside me, and he was like, "I'll take you." I'm like, "Where did you come from?" Like and he's speaking clear English too. This is in
Yeah.
Myanmar,
Yeah.
and I'm like, take me where? He was like, where you want to go? I'll take you. I was like, I want to go to the market. He was like, yeah, I'll take you. And I was like, for how much? Because there's a catch here. And he was
Mm.
like, for free. I'm like,
Oh
this sounds a
my
little sketch,
God.
because I'm all by myself.
Yeah.
You just randomly pulled up on me speaking English. How do you know I even speak English? Like I could
Mm-hmm.
be from somewhere else. But just
Mm-hmm.
saying that you would take me to the market for free, I'm not ignorant. I'm not dumb. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Snatched, and is that
Yeah.
the
And all the
what's the
all the
movie that
movies
all the
Taken,
movies.
all
Taken,
of
that's
them.
the one. That's the one. Yeah, I've seen Taken.
Yeah.
I'm not slow.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that in the back of my mind, like, oh, this
Yeah.
sounds a little risky. But
It's
then I
too good
remember,
to be
like, hey,
true.
I just too good to be true. But I remember, like, hey, I just literally prayed for God to send me
Yeah.
some help. And you can feel it in your gut. Like
Mm-hmm.
your intuition when you're traveling by yourself, your intuition is just heightened, and you can feel things that just don't seem right. And you really need to go with that. So if this
Yes.
doesn't seem right, get out of there.
If you really didn't know God's voice, then you wouldn't have known that that guy was safe to go with. And
Mm-hmm.
who knows how long you could have been lost for that amount of time, and where you could have ended up, or who could have came after that guy. Because it's like, oh, if you didn't go with your gut right then and there, you could have missed that opportunity completely.
Traveling, you have to have a lot of trust, especially traveling to foreign countries. And that particular experience happened to me two other times, once in Shanghai and then another time in Chengdu. So I it had happened before, which gave me more initiative to be like, okay, this scenario has happened before in two other locations. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna trust and go with it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to find your way around. Uh, so, in addition to going to the market, what else did you do when you were there?
When I was in Rangoon, I went to the Shwadagon Pagoda, and it's this massive golden pagoda in the center of Rangoon. And when I tell you, like, I've never seen that much gold in my life, and it's just blinding gold, and it's so magnificent, and it's just an incredible massive structure, pure gold, and just Buddhas aligned all around it. And I went there, and I just, walked around it, entered in like the north entrance, and then ended up in like the southern entrance when I exited. After that, I went to Bagan, and I saw the land of 1,000 temples. And that was the main part of why I went to Myanmar, was to go to Bagan and see all these temples, and that was on my bucket list. And it's just um, huge landscape with, literally, the name speaks for itself, a land of 1,000 temples,
Some
and there
temples.
is 1,000 small, large pagodas, temples, all shrines with Buddhas inside. and I felt like Indiana Jones because you can go into these temples. You have to walk barefoot, which is another
Whoa.
culture shock in Myanmar. Everywhere I went, I don't even know why I brought shoes, because everywhere I
Wow.
went, I had to walk barefoot in these temples and pagodas because it's sacred ground.
Mhm.
So walking barefoot everywhere, and you can go into the pagodas, and then they have these little stairwells that are, narrow, and you climb all the way up to the top, and then you exit out, and you just see the whole landscape and see all of the thousand pagodas like surrounding you. It's an incredible, like, it literally took my breath away when I first saw it for the first time.
That's insane. And I couldn't imagine walking barefoot through, because, of course, when you have a tourist attraction like this, I'm sure there were so many people there. Was it pretty crowded, or do they kind of limit the amount of people?
Mhm. Honestly, I think Myanmar is one of those countries that are kind of underestimated.
Hmm.
So when I went, especially during Chinese New Year, and that's when a lot of Asians travel during that time.
Hmm.
I didn't experience large crowds. It was like a
Okay.
normal amount of tourists, I guess you would say.
Hmm.
And it wasn't that many large crowds, but everyone still had to take their shoes off. And it was a humbling experience. And even to this day, like, I love walking around barefoot. At first, it was weird. Like, I was concerned, oh, my feet are going to get dirty.
Hmm.
Especially, one day I went to this mountain called Mount Popa,
Hmm.
and it's 700 steps up, 700 steps down. And it's maybe about like an hour outside of Bagan, and I went there because it's supposed to have, this sacred rock. It's a pilgrimage, if you would
Okay.
say, for
Yes.
some people. So I
Hmm.
went there, and I'm thinking, oh, I can walk up these steps with shoes on. No, you had to walk barefoot. And it's just looking back on it, I was like, this is not sanitary sanitary, but it's so cool to experience, like, walking barefoot up
Hmm.
those steps, and then having the monkeys right there beside you.
Hmm.
And um it's just really cool looking back on it, some of the things that you end up doing while you're traveling that you would never think you would do.
Definitely. The amount of walking that you do in general, like, you just end up walking because you want to experience the city, you want to see different parts of the city that you can't
Mhm.
necessarily get to, and cabs tended to be expensive, and you normally had to carry the cash and the currency of the place that you're visiting, and you don't always want to do the money exchange.
Yeah, you have to be prepared for that,
Yeah.
just physically and mentally too.
Yes.
Just the amount of exercise you're going to have to do. And from my travel experience, it seems like all the best things to see are always located on top of some mountain, or like
The
down
best
some
view,
forest.
of
Like, the
course.
best views are always it's a struggle to get there.
Yeah.
So you have to have some type of physical endurance to get to the best locations.
What was like the highlight of the trip?
The number one highlight would be watching the hot air balloons and the sunrise. So that's a huge tourist attraction there, is to ride, in a hot air balloon over the temples
Wow.
when the sunrise rises. I couldn't afford that, so I didn't ride in a hot air balloon. But what I could afford was going, and seeing it from the top of a pagoda. So I got up maybe like 4 a.m. 4 a.m. It was pitch dark.
Whoa.
Again, me by myself, pitch
Mhm.
dark, and got on my little scooter and rode to some pagoda that was open,
Yeah.
and just walked inside, walked through the tunnels, and climbed to the roof, the top of it, and
Mhm.
just sat there. And then, more people came as it started to get a little bit, the sun started rising, and we all just sat there, hanging off the sides of the pagodas and
Mm.
watching the sunrise, and then watching the hot air balloons fly across.
That I couldn't even imagine how beautiful that is. And I just always say, I try to give people advice. If you are traveling, spend one day getting up to see the sunrise.
Yeah, I would agree. Sunrises are are really pretty, and to watch it in a different destination is is incredible.
I just want to move into our last segment, which is the short stories segment. Overall, what has been your favorite travel destination and why?
Thailand, hands down,
Wow.
because
That
there
was a
is
fast answer.
Thailand, hands down. There's no other destination like Thailand. I haven't been to Bali yet. I was supposed to go to
Mhm.
Bali now for my
Uh,
group trip in this month, but it got
yeah.
canceled. So, but I heard, Bali is incredible, but so far out of the countries that I've been to, Thailand, hands down, the people are so nice, so hospitable, like they're beyond nice. And the food, amazing. The parties, even more amazing.
Wow.
Like PP Island is just, it's out of this world. Like there's no other destination like physically like it. Just the landscape of it. It's so beautiful.
An underrated travel destination that you recommend and why?
Belize. And if it wasn't for Thailand, Belize is my
Number
top.
one.
Ye Yeah, yeah, it's competing against Thailand.
Mhm.
Just because Belize, people forget, like, they just overlook Belize and go straight to Costa Rica, because Costa Rica's, I think, is, from most people think it's the highlight and the main country to go to in Central America. But Belize, there are people there, like Belize, you feel at home when you go to
They welcome
Belize.
you there just
They,
with
yes,
open arms.
you realize, like, I've been to Belize 3 times, and Belize and Thailand are 2 of the countries out of the 16 that I've been to that I would go back multiple times, and the food is bomb,
Mhm.
and it's just like a laid back community, and there's everything to do. There's everything you can do in Costa Rica, you can practically do in Belize, but for cheaper.
Okay. Oh, wow. It says a lot when a person that loves to travel says, I go back here multiple times, because you want to try and go to so many
Mhm.
different places and experience. And it's like, why go back to the same place? But it says so much. In Central America, that's not too far away from
Yeah.
the United States. So it's a quick trip. And final part of the short story segment, what are some of your top, I would say top 3 travel tips? Just quick fire them.
Always travel with the major credit card. Be open-minded and let go of your expectations.
Got it. Nice. I like the credit card one too, because I think that's what people think of last. It's like, oh, I'll just use whatever I have here where I'm from, but
No,
that's not
bring
how it
one.
works.
Even if you don't think you're going to use it,
Just bring
bring
one.
one.
Yes, definitely. I love those. Just like the Our World Story segment is where we can follow you. Is there anything that you are really passionate about, projects that you're working on, and how can we follow you?
So I'm really passionate about a nonprofit organization called I Fly Youth. I am the program director of I Fly Youth, and what it is it's a nonprofit that focuses on underprivileged middle school age girls of color, and give them the knowledge, tools, and resources to build confidence, leadership abilities, and access to traveling internationally. They're really um, growing the next generation of world leaders in African American and girls of color, right now in the inner cities of Washington, D.C. So I'm really passionate about that. And you can follow me at Venture with V on Instagram and on Facebook. And my website is venturewithv.com.
Awesome. I really, really appreciate your time today. And we'll definitely follow, and all the links for V will be in the description box below. Um, and so we can follow her on her journey. But I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. All right. Well, Bye, everyone.
See ya.